What does the high-performing product culture look like? For product leader Jason Knight, collaboration and communication set great teams apart. In Jason's experience, product teams thrive when there is open, respectful communication across disciplines like design, engineering, and product management. Nobody succeeds alone, as Jason emphasizes great product teams are in it together, collaborating, not competing, to solve big problems. Join us to hear more of Jason's insights on the ingredients for developing a flourishing product culture driven by shared purpose and mutual understanding. There's this other question that I've been curious to ask you about, which is, I know in the work that you've been doing now, you're helping build out and scale the discipline of product management in teams. And that's obviously you're helping actually inform the product culture when you're doing that type of work and building alignment. So when we talk about these kinds of challenges, being that business partner with the rest of the organization, enabling product outcomes to drive the business, to create success for everyone involved in being that bridge, what does that look like for you when you're working with a team and you're trying to help them understand, that maybe they're a startup and they've got one product manager, or maybe even the founder has held that role. What are you focused on when you're trying to look at how now they can scale out successfully?
I think one of the things that I'm not focused on is trying to fix everything in one day. I think that it's really tricky to do that. And it's almost like, I phrased it the other day as like, I don't know if you're aware of like the concept of a non-Newtonian fluid, which is like custard, for example, is a great example. Like the harder you push it, the more force you put on it, then the harder it resists. So you can actually fill a swimming pool with custard and you can run across the swimming pool as long as you kind of impact the ground fast or hard enough. But as soon as you stop, you start to sink. But as long as you're kind of pounding the ground, you can run across an entire swimming pool full of custard. And the reason that I like that analogy is it's the same thing with organizations. Like the more force that you try to exert on changing stuff, the more institutional resistance you're going to get from the people that are already there. Now, this assumes that, of course, that you're in a company that already has some kind of culture, maybe something that's been around for a little bit, and they've identified a need to change. Obviously, if it's a brand new company, there's not no culture, but it's less baked in, I guess, and you've got more chance to kind of adapt it from the beginning. Although I will say that even in very early companies, you do still seem to find almost like an implicit culture, which is the kind of sum total of all of the people that have started the company or the early people that have started working there that kind of bring their old cultures from other places with them. Like maybe they didn't work in cool startups in the past. Maybe they worked in banks or, insurance firms or whatever, and like they just brought some of that with them. But even so, I think whatever the state of the culture, like just trying to go in there swinging a baseball bat is incredibly challenging because you do meet that resistance. So I'm a big fan of nudging. I know that there's books about nudging and it's not exactly my concept, but just the idea that if you can kind of make lots of small changes over time and hopefully those compound, then that probably has a better chance of sticking than just try to just do it all at once. I think also there's a certain level of inception as well, like, trying to make people think that it's their idea, not in a manipulative way, but just trying to get them to understand, again, that whatever the problem is or was, whatever the things that might change could be, kind of walking them through it rather than just going in and saying, you got to do this now. So no, let's talk it through. Let's work out, let's go again from first principles. These are some of the problems that you're having that you've identified. You've already accepted that they're problems. So let's start from there. Like if you can't even get someone to accept that there's a problem, then that's there's a whole different approach there. Like you probably need to try and go and get some more data or evidence or get some backup in some. But if you can get them to sort of say that such and such a behavior or methodology or approach or whatever it is that they're doing is in some way problematic or has driven poor business results in the past, then you've got a good starting point. And then by walking them through it and trying to help sort of let them have their say and almost let them lead you to the solution that you want or nearer to the solution that you want, because you're kind of, obviously you can help and you can nudge and you can try to explain some of your own thinking, but try and get them to think it's a good idea rather than just telling them it's a good idea, and sort of get them to come to you as much. And, that may involve moving a bit towards them as well. Like you don't always get what you want. Like that's for kids at Christmas, right? Like we don't get everything we want. But what we can try to get is closer to what we want. And the best way to get that is to try and make smaller steps more regularly, or smaller changes more regularly, and try to help people come on a journey with you rather than just kind of dictating to them. I think dictating is only really appropriate if you're in a complete emergency situation and like, the wheels are about to fall off, and maybe a bit more kind of pushy at those points. But if you've got some level of runway to work with, then I think your changes are going to last longer if you can, get people to come with you.
I think that's great. When you are seeing a healthy product culture, what are some of the key things that you're seeing are already taking place naturally in the way that they work? Maybe it's the skills that they have. What really stands out to you to say, well, we've got a really healthy culture that is high performing and can really be that partner with the rest of the organization and is capable of delivering great product?
I think communication, like if you can see people very comfortably communicating across disciplines, across functions within the company, that's already a really good start. Like I've worked at companies and I've been to companies where you can tell that there's just no relationship between, say, for example, the sales team and the product team. Now, I'm not saying that the sales team and the product team should be like hand in hand all the time and on each other's calls all the time. But if there's no relationship, that's a problem, because something's going to be missing at some point. Like if the only relationship between the sales team and the product team is the product team complaining when the sales team eventually throw them some hand grenade where they've sold a deal that does, where they've put something in it that the product doesn't do or something like that. If that's the only interaction they have, well, first of all, they're going to have a pretty bad opinion of each other, but also like they could have fixed that a lot sooner if they'd actually spoken to each other. So like I've seen teams where there's, again, no sales or product kind of crossover relationship. I've seen teams where there's no product marketing relationship, as in product and marketing. Two functions that at least notionally are pretty close together, conceptually. I mean, maybe not as close as traditionally sort of product and tech, but, marketing, product started out as a marketing role in the first place, right? And I think that, product people should still have a very strong idea of what's going on in marketing, how their product is being marketed, working with the marketing team or the product marketing team, if they're lucky enough to have one, depends on the company, to help take the product forward and make sure that the positioning and the messaging and the value proposition work is done properly and actually represents what the product does. So again, if these teams aren't talking, if the product team are only talking to the tech team and the UX team and no one else on a regular basis, then that would be an immediate red flag for me and something that needs to be addressed. Like these people need to be talking, again, not necessarily all the time, but certainly more than never. So that would be a really good sign if that was already in place, that people were talking already. If people are sharing information freely, not defensive, not shouting at each other because such and such a thing went wrong, because whatever wrong means in that situation, but that they're kind of taking shared ownership and that people are just in it together. Now, just being in it together doesn't guarantee success. Obviously, you could all be doing the wrong thing together. However, I think you're far more likely to come to a good kind of collaborative decision and be all pulling in the same direction if you are, again, to your book, all aligned, but also just communicating with people, communicating openly and honestly, and everyone valuing each other. I really don't like it when you see people complaining about, for example, whichever function. Let's pick on sales again. Like people complaining about sales being, typical sales people or whatever. It's like, yeah, sure, okay. But they're probably saying stuff about you. Why are we saying stuff like that? Why are we wasting energy complaining about each other rather than try to fix whatever it is that's causing those problems and getting us, again, aligned, working together, moving forward together as a team? I think we should all consider ourselves part of that wider product team or product family. We should all be in it together.
I think that's fantastic. It actually, funny enough that you keep bringing up the analogy with sales. I was meeting with a sales executive yesterday about this very issue, and they have never, ever been informed about how product is looking at the customer and the value creation is taking place. So there was this essential disconnect taking place between the psychological value, in this case, safety, that, customers want to feel safe. And that happens in multiple ways within the product. And then also the fact that all the functional value that it's providing to enable the capabilities that it provides. And, sales had never been exposed to that thinking. And they're like, it would have completely transformed our relationship with product. It would have transformed the way that we actually even sell our product. It would have changed the way they compete in the marketplace to have that insight. And yet it was sitting there probably, 20 feet away within a team that is incredibly passionate about what they do. So I think you're highlighting some really important things that on the surface seem simple, but are actually incredibly difficult. I mean, it goes back to where we started our conversation. There's a lot of people problems in product that are very challenging and on the surface seem simple, but can get very complex very quickly in bringing people together and creating an inclusive space to create and let ideas thrive. So I love that you're putting a spotlight on that.
I think you say again that it sounds simple, and I agree, it does sound simple, but like I don't go 1 week without talking to a new team that has no relationship again with sales. Easy to pick on, but I think it's a really common one. It's a really common disconnect between sales and product to the people that are, well, hopefully at least between them, speaking to a rather large number of customers and really trying to get into their problems and use cases and all of the stuff that salespeople and product teams need to do to build and sell great products. If they're not talking, it's unforgivable.
Yeah. One other thing you touched on that I think I'd just be completely remiss if I didn't ask this is that, one of the people challenges that is often highlighted is the collaboration between product management, design, and engineering, how to bring those teams together, especially as they're scaling. And so, as you're helping organizations build, scale, and they're looking at that, is it just promoting more and more conversation and that connection like you're talking about? Or are there other things that you have seen that are really effective to bring those three disciplines together, and especially finding a common language? I mean, designers are really focused on a different vocabulary than engineers. At least in my experience, you have the benefit of having worn the hat for multiple roles in regard to that. So how have you approached that?
Yeah, I think that, trying to come up with common language is to some extent helpful. I think also just, again, get into that empathetic perspective. Again, if we talk about like what we have to do with sales or marketing to try and work out like how to best resonate with them, try and understand like some of the things that they find important that you might not naturally find important yourself. Like if you're a non-technical product manager, like you've never worked in tech, you may not really have a strong idea about actually how hard certain things are to do in tech. Now, obviously, you'd need to be more of a developer to maybe understand the complete in-depth and all the idiosyncrasies and stuff like that. But at the same time, I mean, I'm a big fan of just saying to people, again, just go and talk to people, go and talk to your engineers, go and talk to your designers, not in a kind of adversarial kind of let's, try and thrash out how you can do what I want type way, but even just go for a coffee. I mean, I recommend this with sales teams and marketers and everyone else as well. Just go and talk to them about what it is that you or they, what's keeping you up? Like, what are your problems? What are the things that you're being judged on? What are the things you judge yourself on? One of the things that I've been doing on the consulting side is doing organizational assessments of people to, sort of just go in and say, well, hey, how's your company doing at the moment? Like, what are your main problems? What are the biggest things that we could maybe fix or that someone could fix? And obviously from an outside perspective, like it gives you a chance to go in there and, you go in there with no preconceptions, no alliances or anything like that. You can just go in there and kind of just tell it like it is, and that's the end of it. And I guess one of the big benefits of doing something like that, not that I'm necessarily recommending that every single person in your organization tries to do some kind of sort of checkup type thing and speak to everyone, but like not all at once anyway, but you just really, they're just going and chatting to someone. You're doing discovery on people. You're not doing discovery on your customers or your users. I mean, they are people too, obviously, but you're doing discovery on your colleagues, trying to work out what their problems are, what they think's on fire, what they think's important. You should know what, even if you don't agree with it, you should know what they think's important, and you should know what types of thing they think are important. And I think that's the biggest miss for people when there's any kind of disconnects within teams. They just don't know, and they don't know because they either assumed or they just forgot to ask, or didn't want to ask if they were lazy or whatever. But it's on all of us to try and work out, not just product people, but as the kind of these facilitators, I guess, it's our job to try and do it if it's not being done from other directions. So just go and talk to these people, work out, first of all, make them feel valued, not in a manipulative way, like you should actually value them, but make them feel that you value them. You should be able to go there and say, look, engineering person or UX person, I'm not your boss, which is true for normally. I'm not your boss. We're working together on a team. I'm not going to be telling you to do anything. I'm going to be asking you to help me with things that are our shared goals. Just getting into that mindset even. Now, of course, that has to be true. There are some companies where the PM is very explicitly seen as the boss. That's something that needs to be challenged on more of an organizational level. But if you're in a situation where maybe you're working for a company that's trying to do stuff, quote unquote, better, and people are in this mindset for maybe their previous careers or previous jobs, previous bad experiences, where they're sitting there saying, well, we've worked for X, Y, and Z companies, and we were just always just seen as these kind of code monkeys, or people that just did the drawing for the PMs. Or no, let's get out of that. Let's find common ground. Let's work out, again, find out what's important to everyone, find out a little bit about their past experience and the types of companies they've worked for, and try and reassure people that that's not how it is here, and B, that's not how I want to work with you. We're a team. Tell me what's up. Always feel free to kind of raise things with me if you think that something's not right. Call me out on my nonsense. I'll call you out on your nonsense. Let's collaborate. And I think just trying to find common ground, again, it's the same as with sales, it's the same with every other part of the organization. Your engineering and your design colleagues, they're people. They have their own biases. They have their own pros and cons, just like anyone else, just like I do, just like you do. Try and work out what they are and try and just come to a kind of a common alignment and agreement on, these are the things that should be, and just try and work together on them.